name is Maas, and I will be presenting our paper, Effective Notification Campaigns on the Web, a Matter of Trust, Framing and Support, which was authored by myself, Adina Stöver, Henning Predöhl, Sebastian Bretthauer, Dominik Herrmann, Matthias Hoddig, and Indra Speaker. So we have heard already today that, to sum it up a bit, the internet is a bit broken right now. So we have very large data breaches that are down to security issues or misconfigurations. Online tracking also isn't doing so great. So we have a lot of creepy online tracking that is also trying to follow us offline. And if we try to legislate our way out of this problem, then the answer is basically dark patterns that try to get our consent, or rather try to annoy us into giving our consent. So now, if you have a specific issue that you care about on the internet, like a specific type of vulnerability, and you want to do something about it, then we could say that there is a three-step process if you want to do this. First of all, you need to figure out which systems are affected by the issue that you care about. Secondly, you need to figure out how you can reach the administrators of these systems. And third, you need to also convince them to act, because, of course, simply by reaching an administrator, it is by no means certain that they are going to remediate the issue that you care about, because maybe they don't care as much about it as you do. So I have, as part of my dissertation, I have considered all three of these steps, but for the purpose of this presentation today, we are only going to look at the last two steps, reaching administrators and convincing them to act. And in this area, I will give you a brief overview of the big picture of the research that I did, and then drill into a single paper. So I conducted 3 studies in total in this area. In the first study, we looked at using competition between different websites to drive them to improve the privacy of their websites. And we published this at Wirtschaftsinformatik 2019, if you're interested in the paper. We then conducted a study where we looked at a specific type of misconfiguration in which sensitive data is accidentally exposed on the internet. And here we ran a notification study where we notified the operators of a couple thousand websites, and we told them about this misconfiguration, and we varied the contact medium. So we would notify some of them via email and a different part using postal mail. And we found that postal mail is a bit more effective than emails, but surprisingly not as much more effective as you might have expected it. And the third and largest study is the one I'm going to be talking about today, which is looking into framing an issue as a legal problem instead of a technical problem, and seeing if this might be more effective in driving remediation. And this is the study that we're going to be talking about today. So if you want to run such a study, you need a problem that is a technical problem on a website that can be found automatically, but that also has legal implications. And luckily, we already had a data set of these issues. So I am one of the maintainers of the website privacyscore.org, which is an open source website scanner that checks websites for security and privacy issues. And as a proof of concept, we had also implemented a compliance check. And this is a check that is specific to the German legal environment, because in Germany, it used to be the case that if you want to use the tracking software Google Analytics, you have to enable a specific extension for it to be compliant with data protection law. So this is what a Google Analytics plugin for your website looks like. You just take a bunch of JavaScript and you drop it on your website. And you have to manually add this part here to make sure that your website is compliant with German data protection law. And it's very easy to get this wrong. You might do it too early, you might do it too late, you might misspell it because it's case sensitive. And in all of these cases, the operation will just fail silently and you will be non-compliant with the law. So We already had such a data set, and we did some more targeted scanning here and found actually a quite large data set, of which we sampled around 4,500 websites for our study. And this also means that since this is a problem that is based on the German interpretation of data protection law, we are limiting ourselves to German websites for our study. So all of the rest of this, what I'm talking about, will be happening inside of Germany. So now that we have our project, let's assemble a team. So first of all, of course, I myself am part of the team, and my PI, Matthias Hollig. We are both in the ATHENE project. We then got ourselves some support from TU Darmstadt. Alina Stöver joined us from the psychology department. And we got Sebastian Bretthauer and Professor Indra Speaker from the law department of the University of Frankfurt. All three of them are part of the interdisciplinary research training group Privacy and Trust for Mobile Users. And then we also included Henning Predöhl and Dominik Herrmann from the computer science department of the University of Bamberg. They are the other two maintainers of Privacy Score, and they also participated in this project. So this was the team with which we tackled the study. So what did our study look like? In total, we looked at three different aspects of sending notifications to operators. The first is, once again, the contact medium. So as I said, we had already run one study and found that letters were a bit more effective than emails in driving remediation. However, there had also been one prior study by a different team that had found that letters are no more effective than emails. So we decided to include this again in this study so that we can get some additional evidence on the effectiveness of letters. The most interesting part of the study is probably the framing. So as I said, our goal was to look at using a legal framing. So where we say this is a violation of the GDPR. So this is the one that we're interested in. And then we also thought, well, if we look at GDPR, what do people think about when they think GDPR? They think massive fines. So let's also include a different kind of framing where we basically include everything that is said in the GDPR framing, but we also include the potential fines that are allowed under the GDPR. But if you want to compare the effectiveness of using a legal framing, you need a baseline that did not include the legal information. So for this, we used a privacy framing, which was basically just a polite message that informed people, hey, you don't have this feature activated. It would be really nice for the privacy of your users if you activate this feature. And the general assumption is that anyone who would react to that would probably also react if we tell them that their website is not compliant with data protection law. The third thing that we investigated is the sender of the message. This is once again something that had been investigated by a different study before. And here our general assumption was that the sender of the message should have a certain impact on the overall remediation rate, because it should make a difference if you get a message from a university, which you know, or if you get a message from some random person on the internet who you don't know. Previous research had actually shown that at least in one study, the sender did actually not make a difference. So we wanted to investigate this in some more detail and again have three different groups. The private citizen, which was just me without any visible affiliation with any organization like a university as a baseline. And then a computer science research group, which was the group of Professor Hollig, and a law research group, which was the group of Professor Speaker. And here we wanted to basically investigate if we have a technical problem that has legal implications, is it more effective to have a sender that has expertise in technological stuff, or is it better to use people who you attribute knowledge about the legal parts? Of course, there's also a control group that was not notified at all. And the reason is fairly simple. We want to know if notifications make any difference at all, or if all of these people would have remediated anyway. So we have a group of people who is not notified as part of the main experiment. We sent our initial message in July 2019, followed by a reminder in August. And then in September, we sent a debriefing message. And this debriefing message was sent to everyone, including the control group. and it contained the information that the previous messages had been sent as part of a study, because we did not make this clear in the original message to avoid observer effects. And what it also included was a link to a survey, which was designed by Alina Stöver, our collaborator from psychology. And with this survey, we wanted to understand the perspectives of the system operators when it came to our notifications. All messages also contained a link to a self-service tool that allowed the recipients to check if their website was compliant or not. And it also included instructions for remediating the issue. And we also collected all of the responses that we got. So phone calls, emails, letters, all of that we collected, and also did some evaluation of it. So let's get to the results. Before we look at the graph itself, let's take a look at what it shows. So on this axis here, we have the survival rate. The survival rate is a metric that comes from survival analysis. And what you can basically imagine this meaning is over a certain time, which fraction of websites has not yet remediated. So here we can see that the control group is way up here at 93% survival rate after 35 days, which means that 100 minus 93, 7% of people in the control group had remediated, 93 had not. For emails, the survival rate is 66% and for letters 55%. So we see that there's a difference of 11 percentage points between them, and letters are more effective than emails. This difference is statistically significant. The results are a bit less clear for the sender. So I hope you can even see this over the screen share, but we can have here two very closely adjacent lines. The top line is the green computer science line, and the blue line stands for the private individual. So they are fairly close together. The difference between them is about 1%. And we can see that actually the computer science group was very slightly less effective than the private citizen, and the legal research group was the most effective group. However, the differences are quite small. The only statistically significant difference is between computer science and legal research group. Finally, let's look at the arguably most interesting graph. This is for the three different framings. And as expected, we can see that making a privacy argument was not extremely effective. We have a survival rate of 69%. Compare that to the 56% for the GDPR framing and the 50% for the GDPR plus fine framing. So half the people we notified with the GDPR plus fine framing remediated within the first 35 days of the first notification. I'm not going to be showing you the data of the second notification because it's more or less the same trends that you can see there. Let's look at the overall best and worst result as well, for the simple reason that these results here, they basically average out all of the three different senders and all of the three different framings. So you are actually hiding how far apart the results can be in practice. And so the overall worst result was sending emails from a computer science group, interestingly not the private individual, but the computer science group, with the privacy framing. And here the survival rate is 82%. So only 18% remediated within 35 days of the first notification. The overall best result compared to that was letters sent by a law research group with the GDPR plus fine framing, where the survival rate is only 39.4%. So over 60% of notified people remediated within the first 35 days. This is quite a good result also compared with many of the previous notification studies. For time reasons, I'm not going to go into great detail for the results of the survey. If you're interested in this, you can find a lot more detail in our paper at USNIX. But you can, I will want to highlight one result. And for this result, I need to tell you that we sent personalized links to the survey to each of the experimental groups. So to each combination of medium, sender, and framing. Each of these combinations had a single link And this allowed us to link the responses that people gave in the survey to the group of the notification that they had received. And with this in mind, we can see that when we asked people to rate the trustworthiness of the notification, so how trustworthy did the notification appear to them, we can see that for the email and letter groups, the difference is quite small. The same is true for the 3 different framings. However, for the sender, there's quite a large difference between the private citizen and the 2 university groups, which is as you might expect, because the private individual does not have any sort of name recognition. What is not as you might expect is the fact that, as we saw, this did not mean that the private citizen actually had worse performance than these 2 groups. So people trusted the message less, but they still acted upon it at roughly the same rates. And this obviously cannot be explained through name recognition. So we can see that the sender does have an influence, but it is probably not exclusively due to name recognition. In the paper, we posit the theory that maybe in addition to name recognition, a second factor that is important is the question of if the recipient, or how much the recipient thinks that the sender of the message is willing and able to impose consequences for inaction. So imagine it like this. You're a system operator, you're operating some website, and you get a message from some random person you don't know, who doesn't have any affiliation with any place that you know. And this message includes information about a violation of the law that is on your website. Do you think, oh, what a nice person, this person definitely did this out of the goodness of their heart? Or do you think, I don't know, is this person going to sue me? I think it's better if I quickly remediate this issue just to be on the safe side. So this is our current best theory. Of course, we can't prove or disprove it using the data that we collected, but it would be quite interesting to see a follow-up study that tries to tease out the effect of this aspect of consequences. Our second key takeaway is that letters increase remediation. Of course, there's the question if they are cost effective. Letters cost money. And so this is a question that can't be answered on a universal basis. It's something that you have to decide for your own notification campaigns. Finally, we saw that the legal framing was effective, and you could also argue that it might have been a bit too effective because some people were really worried that we were going to sue them. And they called us, and they were quite desperate to figure out what was going on. And so we caused a lot of stress that we didn't mean to cause. So basically, the takeaway here is that if you use a legal framing, make sure that people know that you are not going to sue them, because otherwise you might get a lot of worried phone calls. Yeah, and that brings us to the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention.